And it's Ken Kreitzer for CAM. That's Media. We cover cadets, midship in the military, and veterans proudly since 2008. And we have a veteran of the United States Navy and business person now in New York City, and that is Sarah Higgins, who is with Ben's Business Executives for National Security, has done amazing things in her career from being in a Navy airplane for 125 carrier landings, working at the Pentagon, going to Columbia and teaching, and you're now your business career. Sarah, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Ken.
Well, that's great. First off, why don't we talk about your leadership in business, executive director, business executives for national security, a very important perspective in this era. Tell us a little bit about that organization.
Yeah, Ben's is a great organization. It's a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. We've been around for over 40 years. I lead the New York efforts with Ben's, and so we have about 85 members here in New York City. They're all people who are very successful in their business careers and have an interest in national security. And so here in New York, I put together uh, conversations, discussions to exchange ideas, to cross that divide between, the private and the public sector. We have a headquarters down in DC, and they do a lot of really great work directly with the Pentagon and other agencies and departments in DC. And so we cover the whole nation. There's 7 people like me throughout the country supporting those members who want to give back to national security with some of their business knowledge, everything from real estate to construction to finance. It's really interesting to see um, the national security side of the house come together with the business side of the house. I enjoy those opportunities.
Very good. Well, we saw you just over a year ago in New York at a meeting with General David Petraeus as a
Mhm.
featured speaker, as an event that you worked with the Navy League of New York on. You're able to tap into some senior leadership of the U.S. military.
Yes, yes, no, it's great. And like I said, we create those opportunities for exchange, and so it's nice. Ben's kind of cuts into all elements of the economy, so we can gather a very diverse group of business leaders around a table. And a lot of times, senior leaders find that very helpful on the government side. So if they want tech, if they want real estate, if they want finance, we can, we've got all those elements. And I love hearing what the senior leaders have to say to that audience.
So, I was looking at your national website and some of the topics that just are coming up: geopolitical influence of China, NATO at a crossroads,
Mhm.
advances, military medicine, an event you're going to have down in Austin, Texas, strategic edge, blueprint for breakthroughs in defense innovation, and all important topics. What have been some of the topics that you've enjoyed being able to develop?
We've done some really great work with biotech here in New York, and that's led to continuing efforts with the National Commission on Emerging Biotech, National Security Commission on Emerging Biotech. It's been very interesting. Um, a number of our members are in that field, so it's great because we can really provide some expertise there. Um, Coming up, we're going to be visiting the base in Groton, Connecticut, Naval Sub Base New London. So get some more members in to see the nuclear side of the Navy, very important, the silent service. Um, Let's see. I always love those engagements that are a little bit larger with some big names like the General Petraeus event. But, kind of our bread and butter is small discussions, about 20 to 25 people sitting around a table in Midtown Manhattan, having a conversation with Let's see, we had the had recruiter for the Army last year. So the general in charge of all of recruiting had some fascinating insights on this next generation coming up, raising their hands to serve. And oh, we had one recently with the Air Force for uh, uh, just their the bomber force. And coming from naval aviation, that's not something it's not, I know about, but I don't know in depth about. And so that was very interesting for members and for myself.
Well, those are important topics. Obviously, the Air Force is developing its B-21 aircraft, and Navy trip to Groton is fascinating. I got a chance to go to the keel laying of the USS Columbia 2 years ago up in Groton, and actually that was in Quonset Point, Rhode Island. They barged the segments down to Groton for final assembly, and they can't find enough welders to do all the work on the Navy submarine program. That'll be a great trip for your members.
Absolutely. And that's what we like to try and do. It's to see it's to get an understanding of military service, defense, but it is also about the industrial base. You can't do, we're just not gonna, we gotta do the industrial base if we're gonna hit these topics, because it's key to the whole solution.
Absolutely. I was just down last week at the Association of the Army Global Force Conference down in Huntsville and heard General James Rainey from the Army Future Command talk about all the new technology the Army is looking at, and for everything from space to lasers to how to knock down drones, large language models, everything to prevent cyber attacks, and there's so much going on in that field, and then also just being able to do the routine, produce the howitzer shells. What have been some of the areas of like new technology that have stood out in your discussions?
There's always a lot of talk of AI and how to implement it, and how it's simply affecting everything. So that's a topic that kind of comes up in every conversation we have. Um, managing data, certainly. Um, One of the things that uh, we're looking at, forgive me, I don't know if this goes great into technology, but the economic side of the house, capital, understanding that divide between almost finance speak and how to contracts and everything like that, and how the government and business does things. Excuse me, government and military does things. So almost the technology elements that flow into all of that is one of the places we're looking at quite a bit. We're calling the effort Capital 101. It's almost like an education outreach effort to ensure that both sides can speak the same language, because I certainly there's a lot of terms in finance I don't understand, and a lot of terms in the military that the finance folks don't understand. So it's understanding that those crossing ecosystems and how can we bring them together. So that's one of our major efforts.
Absolutely. It's good to hear you had the officer in charge of Army recruiting, because that was one of the points made. I believe it was General Rainey said that the Army still depends on the soldier carrying a 75-pound pack 20 miles in the rain and being able to fight when they get to their destination. Same thing goes for the Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, Space Force, Coast Guard. It still depends on the individual uh, military member to be able to do their job in adverse conditions. And, I know your organization, points that out to the public.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you have to understand to be in the shoes what it's like to be expected to carry out the mission when you're in those austere environments or with that long task load ahead of you.
Yeah. Hey, you've had a really amazing career coming out of ROTC at the University of Southern California. How did you get involved with ROTC, and how did that help your kickstart your career in the Navy?
yeah, I really wanted to go to an expensive school called USC, and I needed scholarships, so I applied for a lot. Both my parents served. My mom was in the Navy, my dad was in the Marine Corps, so service was something that was already familiar. It wasn't something that I was necessarily called to be frank, but I saw the value in it and the fact you get your education paid for and you've got a job. And so I kind of just signed up and hoped I'd like it. And 20 years later, I was, well, 24 years later with college, I was still in. So that proved true, but mainly it was kind of short-term thinking on my part. But of huge long-term benefit that, at age 17, I had no idea how it was going to set me up for life.
And Navy aviation, it's so impressive that you became a flight aviator, countermeasures officer. Tell you, how'd you get into that? And wow, you told me about 125 carrier landings. That's quite a
Yeah.
career.
Yeah, and I certainly, a lot of the people who are my age who are going into aviation, they had seen Top Gun and they're like, yes, this is totally my thing. And I had seen Top Gun, but I don't know, I just never saw myself really flying. But then as I explored the opportunities in the Navy, aviation just seemed very cool. It seemed like a fun place to be, an amazing skill set to learn. So I signed up. I put it on my wish list and took the tests and ended up making it. I was a journalism undergrad major going into naval aviation, but thankfully they teach you everything you need to know. I did find the coursework of ground school very hard. All the science and engineering and engines and weather. But what was nice is I was a competitive swimmer growing up, so I jumped into the pool and did all the swim training, and it was a breeze. So it was nice to have some ease there. Um, but yeah, it was really just I met some people who were in aviation, and I really thought that would be a cool thing to do. I got to fly the in the EA-6B Prowler. I was a backseater, electronic countermeasures officer, as you mentioned. Did two deployments, one on the aircraft carrier and one shore-based in Japan. So I kind of got to see it all, which was really, really great. Loved the crew concept mentality. We had four people in my aircraft, and so you really had to work as a team. And that was the thing I loved best about aviation, getting up in the air. There were four of us all together, and we had to make it work. So that was a great way to spend my 20s for sure. Yeah.
Well, which carrier did you deploy on, and what was that like? I mean, you know, catapult takeoffs, landings on the cables. That's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's a different world. It's an industrial environment at sea for sure. I was on USS Harry S. Truman. I was on another carrier later. I almost said that name, but this one was on Truman. Great ship. Um, Really enjoyed being in the air wing. An aircraft carrier has two elements to it. It has ship's crew and it has the air wing. So this deployment, I was air wing and I was flying every day, 6.5 hour missions. We were over in the Gulf and flying as far north as Mosul. So we mostly night flights, so you're really night owls. It was just a different existence. But the squadron lifestyle is hard but fun. You build a real team around you, a real family, and that's the way it was in my squadron. I enjoyed it. And port calls are the best. You pull in and you get a break, and then you go right back to work and it's flying again.
Well, just extraordinary. I've actually visited the USS Harry Truman. Went to a retirement ceremony for one of their chiefs, an extraordinary ship. And then you went to what some call the five-sided box, the
Yeah.
Pentagon, and it moved into the public affairs role. And what was that like? What was that trend? That was a big change. Went from really exciting, on the go activity to being in, more of an office environment. What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It was very different. It's not a move many people do, frankly. Um, but it was the right one for me. As I mentioned, I was a journalism undergrad, and so I'm very much into words and writing and narrative, storytelling, people. Um, and as much fun as flying was, it's a very, especially our mission, it's very technical. And so, as I was looking at my career and trying to think creatively about how I could continue service, um, going into public affairs seemed like a really good fit for me. And it turned out to be the case. And I loved being a public affairs officer, wearing my wings, because a lot of people would look at me and be very confused. Why? Why do you have wings and, and all your medals and things like that, ribbons? But you're a PAO because you don't necessarily have the same opportunity to get those when you're in the PAO field. But in any case, communications was a great fit for me. I really enjoyed um, the various challenges. In a way, to me, aviation was going to be the same thing for the next 20 years if I continued with it. Every public affairs job is so different. Sometimes it's working with the media. Sometimes it's much more advising of a senior leader. Sometimes it's very outreach intensive. I was stationed in New York City, and I mean, that is something I never would have been able to do if I stayed aviation. I never would have been living in New York, working Fleet Week every year, working Veterans Day parade, working the morning talk shows, the evening talk shows, getting service members, on screen, things of that nature, preparing them for that. Working with the publishing industry. And so there's just a lot of diversity and experience for me as a public affairs officer that I loved. You mentioned the Pentagon. I ended my last 5 years in the Navy were in the Pentagon doing public affairs jobs there. And yeah, it is definitely a puzzle palace.
Absolutely. I've been there a few times, and it is a challenging environment, especially for those who have been out in the force, out in the Navy or the Army, out in the field, all over the world. It's a different kind of role that's so important. Then you made your transformation, going into leaving the Navy, and teaching at Columbia, and then the opportunity with Ben's to work with corporate executives. How was that transition for you?
It's been good. I decided to finish up with my time with the Navy at 20 years. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was also, again, kind of the right one for me. Um, I wanted a new adventure. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to actually kind of transition out of communications. And so it took me a little while to find a job because most people looked at my resume and saw my qualifications, my history, and were like, "Man, let's keep you right in the comms field." And I decided to teach at Columbia because I could keep my foot in the door, kind of academic wise, working with professional communicators and up and coming communicators. Um, but getting the job with Ben's Business Executives for National Security was a bit of a twist in my path because it's a fundraising job, it's development, it's nonprofit work, it's event planning, it's relationship management. A lot of these things I had touched on being a public affairs officer in the Navy, but I hadn't done them in this way. So it was nice to build off of those skills and adjust. And, a lot of people say transition is hard, and I'll agree with that. Transitioning out of military service, I was ready for it. I wanted it. And it's still, there were days I was like, what have I signed myself up for? It's a different lifestyle. And I was really glad to land with an employer who understood that, and an employer that still was adjacent to the world that I knew, i.e., the business world it being focused on national security. So my if you will, my target audience was very different, but the subject matter was the same, and that was a really good fit for me.
Well, it's you've done amazing things, in your Navy career, and and that, being at Columbia and with Ben's, and really just so impressed with what you've been able to accomplish, the challenges that you've taken on coming out of college, going into the Navy aviation program. That's really something. Hey, I didn't ask you, what rank did you leave the Navy as?
I was a commander.
You're a commander, full commander. That's a great recognition and responsibility. So, Sarah, any final thoughts for us today?
Uh, it's great to be here. I haven't done one of these kinds of interviews in a long time. So, thanks for letting me join you, Ken, and talking to your audience. I guess the one last thing I would add is how much I love being in New York City, this area up here. It's just got such an energy, and the people are wonderful. We're all hard here, but we are nice once you get behind the hard exterior. So I love being in the city and getting that experience, especially as a veteran.
Well, that's great that you enjoy New York City after time in California and all over the world with the Navy. Commander Sarah Higgins, Director at Ben's Business Executives for National Security. Great to chat with you, and thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you so much, Ken.
Our pleasure. Great to chat with you. We'll do it again. And this is Ken Kreitzer for CAM Vets Media. We cover cadets, midship in the military and veterans proudly since 2008. Thank you for watching.